Hi guys, happy Sunday. I'm doing this from my car today, so I hope it resonates and you guys can hear me and all that good stuff. And usually I don't know that until I post. So, and excuse my chest. It's still bad. I cannot get rid of this cough for literally, I don't know, since my birth, a month. But it's super annoying that I have to always clear my throat. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about mental health. I know that, that is a heavy weighted subject in general in the world that we live in today. A. B, it's definitely something I'm pretty well versed with in my own life because of my one of my daughters who suffers from some mental health stuff. So I feel like I've lived a lot of it, and I think it does apply to relationships, the end of marriages, and what that looks like and what that can do to your mental health. I know I've talked in the past about my PTSD that I got when I was carjacked in college, and then the reoccurrence of it when Brian left me. And not even, it wasn't, I just need to say that it wasn't even Brian leaving me that gave me the PTSD. It was all, the betrayal stuff and the stuff that was so secretive that just skirted underneath, that I didn't know. And all of that realization of how could that all happen under my nose and all those kinds of things, was clearly traumatic. In a way that set my PTSD off again, and working through that and all that stuff. So I just think mental health is a really important conversation that we always need to have and that I always want to have. And, this being no different in this situation. And I do think that, again, we're going to be talking about subjects that lead to a little bit of everything. But sometimes I'll go off subjects of amicable divorce and talk about real life stuff that, did filter into my relationship or does filter into my relationship with Bri, and our kids. So yeah, so mental health, it's a really funny thing because I think what I'm realizing at my age is I grew up at a time where not everybody, went to therapy. And when you're a kid and you're in it, I always went to therapy. I started going to therapy when I was probably 6, or 7, I want to say. And then closely thereafter, my parents got divorced. So the idea of oneself working on yourself has always been something that's been kind of like you have breakfast, we have lunch, we have dinner, we work on ourselves, we exercise, we eat well. It just became very, the norm for me, I would say. And, of course, until you get out of that childhood and you realize that maybe that wasn't the norm for everyone, especially, in the 90s and stuff like that. It just, it just wasn't what it is today. I'm so thankful it is the way that it is today, especially with my struggles with my child and that it's readily accessible. And I mean, not that I give a flying fuck if there's a stigma to anything, not a single fuck do I give, but for her and, stigma and as a young lady and stuff like that, it's easier to feel really proud about working on yourself, and doing that out loud. And not feeling, and then having that conversation about working on yourself with other people and them being like, oh yeah, me too, because I kind of felt like I wasn't always the norm. I realized that after the fact, excuse me. And I do really believe in it. I think, as I can relate it to marriage and my divorces, I married somebody who did not come from that same school of thought. And by the way, that's okay. We were different in many ways, and differences are the things that I celebrate. I am a multitude of different things. So, day to day, I didn't really think about it when I was entering the relationship about how, he hadn't done any work on himself. I mean, you just always have to fucking work on yourself, but there was no work done. There was no work done and in my unit, I should talk. So my sister is a clinical psychologist. My brother-in-law is a psychiatrist. Sounds kind of crazy. And even so, just family members, other siblings, with sisters-in-laws, whatever it is, have all work on themselves, continue to work on themselves, work with other people, believe in health and wellness, mental health and wellness in that way. So that is kind of the vein of which that I grew up, like I said. So I don't fault other people, especially as children, right? If you grow up in a family where that's just not what was deemed important, what I do think is you do definitely nowadays, I can't say, even 20 years ago, even 15 years ago, but definitely nowadays, when you get to a certain age, it is your responsibility to work on yourself. You can't blame the fact that your parents didn't do it or you didn't do it as a kid. Like, you got to your like 20s, mid 20s, late 20s, 30s, definitely by 30s, you should be doing some kind of work on yourself. I'm actually shoving my daughter who just turned 15. She's starting it. Not, I just don't want her to implode when she gets in her 20s and 30s. She just needs to start to do some work on herself. So, I not for any particular reason, or there could be a reason. I just think that, you do have a responsibility. But with Brian, I entered into a family and into a relationship with somebody who hadn't done the work and whose parents desperately needed to have done the work. Siblings desperately needed to do the work because everybody does. There's nothing wrong with them. We all need the fucking work. And they didn't. And what I realized is that became a thing, right? Because obviously he was an addict and acting out of, I don't really believe in like that whole like midlife crisis. Like you're a fucking man, like figure it out. But, I do think there's a certain time where you start to implode. If you don't work on yourselves, then you overcompensate and you, quench thirsts that you shouldn't with inappropriate things like gambling, like drugs, like drinking, like women. And that's, exactly what happened with him. And I didn't realize that it would have such an impact on my relationship because, maybe doing the work on himself, earlier on, and then maybe doing the work with each other on a relationship, because I do believe that's important too, would have changed things. I don't know. I'm not going to say that would have saved the marriage. I'm not going to say that. But I do think two people coming into a relationship where both communicate feelings and emotions and work on themselves means something, for sure. And also stops me in certain situations right now in, not repeating that pattern, right? Like, having trouble with ending up with somebody who's done some work, right? Like that's a big deal. And mental health is a big deal. And then, it's the same thing that I always say to everyone. So, my daughter, I always ask her if it's okay if I talk about some things on here. I just always want to make sure she's okay. She's like, Mom, I'll come on and talk about it. Maybe she will. Maybe I'll bring her on. She's over 18 now. So, maybe, but I always ask her just to make sure that she feels comfortable with it. I'll never just go into it in depth, but just some stuff. And one of the things that I learned managing her mental health, and that is a daily thing, is that, a lot of people, just like getting divorced and just like my amicable relationship with my ex-husband, a lot of people have things to say about my daughter's mental health, right? Which is, I find really interesting, because if you're not a parent, their parent, right? Or their physicians, psychiatrists, clinical psychologists, whatever, and you're not engaging in a conversation where you have a similar situation, I find it the same way that I do with everything else. Like if you're not living it and experiencing it, then it's very hard for me to really take, or unless you're a professional in this area, like sometimes people, you should do this or she shouldn't do this, and I want to look at them, and first of all, I want to look at them and tell them to shut the fuck up. Definitely. But I try not to be rude. But like, I also want to be like, listen, it is very hard to understand clinical depression and anxiety and a personality disorder all rolled in one person, and then sit there and tell me how things should go with her. Period. Like really, period. I find that with everything. And I told you guys that, like, getting divorced, like the amicable, like I just said, or anything in life, losing a parent as a child, divorce, go on and on, disease, death, whatever it is. Like, Jesus fucking Christ, I've literally experienced all the things I just listed. But it's hard to understand the magnitude of what goes on unless you've experienced it. And I feel very strongly about it when it comes to mental health, and especially kids, mental health and children. Because it's very easy for somebody to say, you should do this, you should do that. And like, look at them and be like, really, and the best is when you hear it from people who aren't even parents. That's like, I'm like, okay, you don't even have a kid. So just stop even before we get to mental health, because yeah, we cannot connect on that level, unfortunately. And that there's nothing wrong with that. I'm sure listen, I don't have my own dog. I don't have, I don't have certain things that other people have, right? So I wouldn't tell you how to do the things that you need to do, because I don't have that. And so if you ask me about my opinion on something, I'm happy to give it to you. But I do think that mental health is like everything else I've discussed. I think having an opinion on it is tough. So one of the things that I think is really great that, I tie always back into my relationship with my ex-husband is the fact that we have to be on each other's sides and on the same page, especially when we're dealing with one of our children who struggles with mental health. Because if we're not on the same page, because it is a struggle for her every day, and it becomes a struggle for us every day. And so we have to be on, and a beautiful struggle. I love my daughter, and Bry's really, really great about it too. But one of those things, it's just another reason to have a nice relationship with your ex if you have a kid who struggles. And so many people have kids who struggle. Like, it doesn't have to be as extreme as our case. It could just be anxiety. It could be ADHD. It could be depression. It could be anything. It really could be anything. And, I think that is a really hard thing to navigate every single day. And doing it alone as a parent, if you have another parent who's present in that person's life, and being on the same page, I think is really important. Probably one of the most important things about my relationship with Brian as it relates to the kids is her mental health and how we deal with it together. It's challenging. We come up against some things sometimes, because I am the primary parent in terms of, frequency at which I have the kids or deal with the kids or manage the kids. Bry's really great. He defers to me often. But that's not to say he doesn't have a say. He has a say in everything. And I come to him all the time. Like, sometimes I literally pick up the phone and I'm like, I'm so exhausted. I need help. I can't even think straight. My brain is not processing. I need help. And you need to help. We need to walk me through this. Like, am I being too hard? Am I being too soft? Whatever it is. Or can you speak to her therapist? Or can you call her? Sometimes you need that. And I just am so glad that I have that with him, because even if he's not my partner in life, right, with me, he's still my partner in life with my kids. And I need that support, especially, mental health is tough. It's really, really tough. And also working with people and friends and family around you and helping them learn how to navigate your child through mental health, right? Because some people just think it's so simple. Like, it's funny because I just equate it to them having no idea, because they just don't experience the stuff that we do. And so they just don't have any clue, and they just need a little guidance. But I need our messaging about how to handle certain things with her needs to be on point, and it needs to be agreed upon when it comes, to that, and how other people in our sphere, navigate her and manage her and understand her, right? And understand her. And I just feel like if we were coming from different playing fields, it would be a problem. And listen, a guy, a man raising girls, and being that father figure to young women is so important. Like, I still remember just things my father would say to me. And I know I've issued a disclaimer for his dickness before, but I remember just him commenting on some of my clothes or something and just making me feel small and awful about myself. And I already felt insecure about things. And I went through this raging, moment of eating disorder and all this stuff. And it just all stemmed from like how he depicted me. And so it's so important that Brian's position in these girls' lives, especially with a person that struggles with mental health, is strong and positive, and supportive. And so I think sometimes it's hard for other people to really understand the magnitude of conversations and what happens, with kids and mental health and how important it is, that language, and stuff like that. I really do. And it's just so important, if everybody here is listening, that if you are struggling or somebody struggling, that you offer to help them or get them help or get yourself help and not feel ashamed by it. And recognize that everybody struggles and there is a way to work through it. There are doctors to walk you through it, so you can, therapy and meds if needed and all the things that, just there's Western medicine and health benefits to whatever it is, exercise. I'm sure many of my listeners already know all the things that I'm saying, but to never feel ashamed of asking for help, needing help, all those things. I was so broken when Bri left. Like I really, really was. I didn't even realize it. I didn't even realize the PTSD had come back, and I was in therapy with Aiden, with her therapist, and she walked out for a minute. We sometimes would speak a couple minutes without her here, and we were going through the divorce stuff, and she looked at me and she's like, "You have PTSD." And I guess it was by the way that I was talking about it and stuff. And I just thought to myself, I do? I just thought everybody would feel this way, and she was like, no, and, just she encouraged me to feel okay with if I needed a med or help or whatever it was that I needed. And so these conversations are really important. And I think it's really important as it relates to, the subject at hand, being divorced and working together and, doing right by the kids. And especially if you have a child or children who suffer through mental health stuff, being on each other's page is integral to the success that your child does working on themselves and feeling good about working on themselves and understanding that they are supported and that we are a team and there's nothing that they could do that wouldn't make us love them, even if they're struggling with mental health, and understanding that it is difficult for parents with kids who struggle with mental health. So yeah, I would love to continue this conversation. It's a hard one. It's a hard one for me to talk about. There's always more you wish you could do or say to just take the pain away from your child when they struggle. But they learn great coping skills, and therapy has been really, really positive for us. I always throw myself, back into therapy. I feel like I would love to go. I would, if I could go to therapy, like 2-3 times a week just to unload, that would, maybe I sound crazy. Maybe I'm crazy, but that sounds so lovely right now, to just take an hour to work on myself every couple of days. It's just absolutely never going to be possible. Well, it's not possible right now, but this subject, I want to continue talking. I'm curious what you guys all think about it. And if there are still stigma, I know there is a lot of stuff with men. Again, I'm a woman, so I don't want to speak to something that I don't personally experience, but I do a lot of reading and writing. I have a lot of reading and writing about mental health, and have a lot of conversations and listen to podcasts and read books and all that stuff on this subject matter, and have men in my life who struggle with mental health stuff, and know that that's just a bigger mountain to climb for men, and that I get that, that they were programmed one way, and it's still can be very much that way. I'm hoping that kind of pendulum, falls the other way, and swings over to the level of acceptance in men and mental health and things like that. Because, as you can quote from Here to Kingdom Come, you can talk about change, you can do all the things, right? You can do all the things. But unless you're healing and doing the work and putting the work in, then it's just never going to change. And that's true for my daughter. She's always going to have to really put the work in. That's true for me. That's true for everybody. We are all works in progress. And it's just something that, always kind of needs to be worked on. So I hope everyone had a great weekend. And we'll continue talking about the hard stuff. Maybe I could talk about something a little bit later next week. I feel like it's been heavy, these episodes. But important, all very important things. So hope you guys have a great week, and I'll talk to you next Sunday.